Krask. I am from Frederick, Maryland. I was my junior year at a large state university, and I lived on campus in sort of what was known as the party dorm. And I was clearly a bad fit for it. I'd lived there for 3 years. And while I was there, a sort of subtle kind of harassment started, which involved me being gay. And at the time, I was not out to myself or out to anyone else. It's originally started just as whispers and then became very aggressive. So if I went into the bathroom, someone would say, "Don't go in there, the fag's in there." Or if I went into the shower, somebody would be sure not to go in the shower, you don't know what will happen. And I was spending a lot of time with a friend of mine who, another man, who I'm sure, we were in love with each other, but neither one of us were out. And he was manic depressive, and we were spending a lot of time together, and he was going through a breakdown. And because we spent so much time together, the guys on my hall assumed all sorts of things about why we would be spending so much time together in my room, when basically I was trying to take care of him. He tried to attempt suicide, and I was the one who had to commit him to the hospital. And the next morning, when I came back to my room, my door had been vandalized. And it was vandalized with a life-size depiction of 2 men having anal sex in indelible purple marker. No one seemed to care. No adult noticed. The RA didn't say anything. There was no way to sort of intervene. It was just sort of let boys be boys, and this is what happens. I was so puzzled just by the sheer meanness of it and the fact that they had no idea what was really happening and that my friend was so sick, and that I had to take him to the hospital. And I just couldn't understand it on a fundamental level. So, this was 1987, pre-internet, pre-cell phone, pre-social media. There was no sort of immediate way to address this, except for the school newspaper, which was the main source of information for the student bodies, which everybody read. And I just had the thought, I'm going to write something about this. So the content of the editorial was a description of my experience, starting from the Whisper campaign to some of, examples of just craziness. My main question in the editorial was, I don't understand why you guys care so much, and why is it any of your business? I never came out in the piece, because to me that seemed irrelevant. It's just a fundamental human dignity question. So the day it was published, some of my friends sort of very kindly spent the day with me and came back to my dorm with me. And strangely, nothing happened. There was no pushback. There was no... the stakes were not escalated in any way. But what did happen was the harassment stopped, and it stopped immediately. No one ever said anything to me. No one ever apologized. There was no conversation about it. But it did stop. And looking back on that now, one of the things I'm struck by and sort of how much the world has changed, not a single adult said anything to me either. Not one of my teachers. No one from the school reached out to me. The resident assistant never knocked on my door and inquired what happened. But I think, the real takeaway for me was learning that I had agency. And I think sometimes there is a perception like that you can't do anything, or that all you can do is fall over in a faint if somebody looks at you the wrong way. We do have power, and there is a way to respond, and there is a way to stand up for yourself and claim your dignity, even if it's not immediate in the situation. If it's just telling a story, that counts. Because ultimately, telling the story is what changed it. I would not wish that experience on anyone. It was a terrible experience. Nor would I trade the lesson I learned from that. and the understanding of the power of words in the world and the power of communication in the world. So even though it wasn't Twitter, even though it wasn't social media, with snail mail and a newspaper and all of that old technology, it still worked.